In the Central Pacific during June 1942, 4 Imperial flat-tops were engulfed in flame and slipped beneath the waves. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, the heart of the Kido Butai, the force that had dominated the ocean for half a year, were gone. In the capital, the Naval High Command released bulletins proclaiming triumph. The populace learned of enemy casualties, of triumphant actions, of the Empire's relentless progress. Yet within the command spaces aboard the battleship Yamato, a starkly different appraisal was occurring. Admiral Yamamoto Isoroku, mastermind of the strike on Pearl Harbor and leader of the Imperial Navy, conferred with his chief of staff, Admiral Ugaki Matome, examining the true accounts. 4 fleet carriers lost, more than 300 warplanes destroyed, countless veteran aviators slain. Opposing this, America had sacrificed a single carrier, the Yorktown, and roughly 150 aircraft. Ugaki noted in his journal that evening a prescient reflection. The engagement had been a calamity. The crucial issue was whether Japan could outpace its foe in rebuilding. Yamamoto had long understood this would decide the conflict. Educated at Harvard from 1919 to 1921, having served as attaché in Washington, he had journeyed across the United States, witnessing its manufacturing plants, petroleum wells, and immense productive potential. He had argued against war with America, cautioning all who would heed that Japan might secure successes for 6 months, possibly a year, but could never prevail in a drawn-out struggle against U.S. industrial strength. Now, scarcely 3 weeks after what the nation celebrated as a magnificent win, he confronted the foreseen truth. Japan commenced hostilities with 10 fleet carriers. It retained 6. America began with 7. It also now possessed 6, Enterprise and Hornet, veterans of Midway, Saratoga under repair, and Wasp, lately moved from the Atlantic. Ranger stayed in the Atlantic. Lexington had been lost in the Coral Sea during May. The totals appeared almost even. This misconception would shadow Imperial strategy for the subsequent 24 months. By July 1942, as Japan fortified its defensive lines and planned future campaigns, reconnaissance started reaching Fleet Command concerning U.S. Naval Yard operations. The dispatches highlighted growing activity at facilities in Newport News, Brooklyn, and Philadelphia. They followed the debut of new vessels, the initiation of what seemed a fresh category of carrier, bigger than any prior type, labeled the Essex class. Imperial analysts, judging from past American building cycles, projected these warships would require 3 to 4 years to finish. Japan concurrently had 2 major carriers being assembled. Taiho, integrating battle lessons, and Shinano, undergoing conversion from a Yamato-class battleship frame. Imperial strategists reckoned these would be operational by late 1943 or early 1944. The contest appeared feasible. This estimate depended on a core misreading of events in American shipyards. The Essex-class vessels were being constructed with previously untried approaches: modular assembly, prefabrication of whole segments, continuous work rotations. The lead ship, USS Essex, had been started on April 28, 1941, over 7 months before Pearl Harbor. By August 1942, it was already 60% finished. Imperial intelligence failed to perceive this. How could they? No country had ever built capital ships so rapidly. The belief that American carriers needed 3 to 4 years was founded on the duration required by all other nations. It was a logical supposition. It was disastrously incorrect. On August 7, 1942, American troops invaded Guadalcanal in the Solomons, capturing the partly built Japanese airstrip. The assault stunned Imperial officers who had not anticipated America would initiate offensive action so quickly after Midway. The astonishment intensified in the ensuing weeks as the Americans showed not merely the resolve to battle for the island, but the ability to maintain the campaign. During August and into September, the sea fights around Guadalcanal disclosed something that alarmed the fleet staff. The Americans had carriers to devote to continual warfare. Enterprise and Saratoga functioned in support of the Guadalcanal effort, clashing repeatedly with Imperial forces. When Saratoga was struck by a submarine torpedo on August 31st and had to retire for fixes, Wasp and Hornet sustained operations. Ugaki recorded in his diary his mounting unease. The Americans were not acting like a navy broken at Midway. They were campaigning forcefully, seeking combat, preserving a posture that demanded multiple fleet carriers simultaneously on station. Where were they obtaining the means? Where were the reserves permitting such endeavors? The explanation arrived incrementally. On September 15th, an Imperial submarine torpedoed and sank USS Wasp. Briefly, it appeared the current might shift, America was losing carriers quicker than it could substitute them, but intelligence summaries indicated Saratoga was already re-entering service after its August injuries. An Enterprise, though harmed in the Eastern Solomons battle on August 24th, stayed in action. Then came October 26, 1942, the Battle of Santa Cruz. Imperial carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku fought American carriers Hornet and Enterprise north of the Solomon chain. The clash ended with Hornet sunk and Enterprise severely damaged. On paper, it was an Imperial victory. One American fleet carrier lost, one badly hurt against two Imperial carriers damaged. At fleet headquarters, guarded optimism emerged. America was reduced to just Enterprise and Saratoga in the Pacific, both wounded, both needing repair. Japan still held Shokaku and Zuikaku along with several light carriers. For the first instance since Midway, Japan had gained provisional carrier dominance in the Pacific. This hopefulness persisted about 6 weeks. In December 1942, intelligence reached Tokyo that sent tremors through the Naval Ministry. USS Essex had entered commission on December 31, 1942. The vessel had progressed from keel laying to combat readiness in 20 months. This was inconceivable. This was swifter than any nation had ever constructed a fleet carrier. Imperial intelligence personnel re-examined the data, sure of a mistake. There was no mistake. Essex was operational, and reports signaled it was not solitary. Additional hulls were in advanced construction phases. The modular techniques the Americans employed had shortened building time almost by half. What Imperial planners thought would take 3 to 4 years was consuming 18 to 20 months. Yamamoto sought a conference with Naval Minister Admiral Shimada Shigetaro in early January 1943. The meeting's archives are partial, but the conclusion was evident. A re-evaluation of Japan's strategic situation. If America could build fleet carriers in under 2 years, and if multiple hulls had been started in 1941 and early 1942, then by late 1943, America would attain carrier supremacy Japan could never equal. The arithmetic was cruel. Japan began the war with 10 fleet carriers and lost 4 at Midway. It had 2 under construction that would not be ready until late 1943 at best. America began with 7, lost 4, Lexington, Yorktown, Wasp, Hornet, but had Essex active and at least 8 more Essex-class hulls in varied building stages. Japanese naval yards could not equal this tempo. The causes were several. Fewer yards, reduced steel output, lesser electrical capacity, smaller skilled labor forces, and most vitally, less fuel. American yards operated 3 crews around the clock, driven by boundless power and supplied by limitless raw materials. Japanese yards worked slower, hampered by resource scarcities that aggravated monthly as American submarines began crippling tanker movements. In February 1943, Yamamoto ordered a sequence of tactical exercises at Fleet Command to simulate potential results if American carrier output continued at the observed rate. The simulations presumed Japan would possess 6 to 8 fleet carriers available through 1944. They presumed America would hold 12 to 15 by mid-1944. The outcome of every simulated scenario was identical. Japanese loss, not a narrow defeat, not a dignified setback, but utter catastrophic failure. The American numerical edge would let them withstand losses that would be fatal to Japan, to keep constant carrier coverage across multiple zones. To mount campaigns Japan could not oppose concurrently. The officers conducting the exercises kept repeating situations, altering factors, attempting to discover a route to victory or even deadlock. They found none. The industrial divide was simply too vast. Every scenario commencing with American carrier superiority concluded with Japanese defeat. Yamamoto read the analyses in his quarters aboard Yamato. He had foreseen this arrival. He had cautioned about this before the war started. He had informed Prime Minister Konoe Fumimaro in 1940 that he could rage unchecked for 6 months or a year, but promised nothing thereafter. It had been 14 months since Pearl Harbor. The 6 months had elapsed. The year had passed. Now the reckoning was due. On April 18, 1943, Yamamoto perished when American P-38 fighters ambushed his transport aircraft over Bougainville. American codebreakers had deciphered Imperial naval messages and arranged the interception explicitly to eliminate him. His death removed the sole Imperial naval commander who had completely grasped from the outset what Japan confronted. His replacement as head of the fleet was Admiral Koga Minichi. Koga inherited a worsening strategic condition and intelligence that grew more dire each month. In May 1943, a new USS Yorktown was commissioned, the second to bear the name, followed by a new Lexington in February, Bunker Hill in May, a new Wasp in November, a new Hornet in November. America was christening fresh carriers after those lost, and building them quicker than Japan could destroy them. Imperial intelligence monitored each commissioning, each trial voyage, each dispatch to the Pacific. The documents piled on desks in Tokyo with rising regularity. By close of 1943, America had 6 Essex-class carriers operational, plus Enterprise and Saratoga still active, 8 fleet carriers. Japan had 4, Shokaku, Zuikaku, and 2 smaller fleet carriers. Yet the figures minimized the imbalance. Essex-class carriers were bigger than their imperial equivalents, holding 90 to 100 planes each versus 75 to 84 on Japanese types. They possessed superior damage containment, better radar, stronger anti-aircraft weaponry, and most crucially, they had an industrial foundation behind them that could replace losses in planes and pilots far faster than Japan could. The aviator shortfall was becoming acute. Japan started the war with about 3,500 qualified carrier pilots. By late 1943, most pilots who had struck Pearl Harbor, who had roamed the Pacific those initial 6 months, were dead. Training schemes could not restore them rapidly enough. Imperial pilot instruction had been cut from 3 years to 6 months, then to 3 months. The novice pilots joining carrier units were barely able to land on a deck in calm weather, let alone fight American flyers receiving ever-improved training and more airtime. American pilot training programs conversely were growing. The United States graduated over 10,000 new pilots annually, preparing them for 12 to 18 months, granting them hundreds of hours aloft before they ever saw battle. The quality divide was expanding as swiftly as the quantitative gap. In November 1943, American forces invaded the Gilbert Islands, starting the advance across the Central Pacific. The carriers backing the operation included Essex, Yorktown, Lexington, Enterprise, and Saratoga. 5 fleet carriers functioning together, delivering strikes that overpowered Imperial defenses through pure mass. At fleet headquarters, now moved to Truk, Koga examined intelligence projections of American carrier power. The forecast estimated by mid-1944 America would have 12 to 15 fleet carriers active in the Pacific. Japan would have 6 at most. Koga assembled his staff to review choices. The talk was grim. Japan could not win a carrier engagement against such odds. The sole hope was to evade decisive battle until Japan could reconstruct its air units, instruct new pilots, and somehow close the gap. But avoiding combat meant surrendering the initiative to America, permitting them to advance across the Pacific at their selected speed. The alternate was to pursue a decisive clash on advantageous conditions, employing land-based air to bolster carrier air, aspiring to achieve local superiority via force concentration. This would be the strategy culminating in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. By March 1944, intelligence indicated America now had 9 Essex-class carriers operational, plus Enterprise and Saratoga, 11 fleet carriers with more en route. The reports observed additional Essex-class hulls were in late construction phases with commissioning planned through 1944 into 1945. Imperial naval planners sat in their Tokyo offices reading these updates and faced a reality nearly beyond belief. America was constructing fleet carriers faster than Japan could produce destroyers. The industrial chasm was not merely large, it was total. There existed no route to parity, no prospect of matching output, no chance of winning a production race. Koga died on March 31, 1944, when his plane vanished in a tempest while flying from Palau to Mindanao. His successor, Admiral Toyota Soemu, took command just as the Truth Imperial leadership had sought to evade became inescapable. June 19, 1944, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Imperial carriers. Taiho, Shokaku, Zuikaku, and 6 light carriers met an American formation of 15 carriers. 7 Essex-class, 2 Independence-class light carriers rebuilt from cruiser hulls, Enterprise, and 5 more Essex-class commissioned in 1944's first half. 15 carriers. America concentrated 15 fleet and light carriers in one task group. Japan had 9, 3 being light carriers with restricted plane capacity. The battle lasted 2 days. American fighters, fitted with radar and guided by control officers on the carriers, intercepted Imperial raids before they neared the American fleet. Of about 375 Imperial aircraft sent, roughly 300 were destroyed. American airmen termed it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Imperial carriers Taiho and Shokaku were sunk by submarines. Zuikaku survived but forfeited most of its air complement. In Tokyo, when the accounts arrived, silence filled naval ministry rooms. The numbers were irrefutable now. America had not merely rebounded from Midway, It had assembled a fleet that overshadowed anything Japan could deploy. The 4 carriers lost at Midway had been replaced by over a dozen new ones, each more potent than its predecessor. A staff officer at the Naval Ministry inspecting the battle records inscribed a note in a document's margin. We estimated they required 3 years to build these ships. They accomplished it in 18 months. We failed to comprehend what we confronted. This was the instant of complete understanding, though it arrived far too late. The industrial capability Yamamoto had forewarned, which he had observed directly during his American stay, had materialized exactly as he predicted. America had not just recovered from Midway. It had submerged Japan beneath a landslide of production no measure of bravery or talent could surmount. By October 1944, at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Japan committed its surviving carriers as lures with scarcely enough planes to outfit their decks. The flat tops, once the fleet's pride, that had hit Pearl Harbor and roamed the Pacific, were diminished to bait in a desperate wager. 4 carriers, Zuikaku, Chitose, Chiyoda, and Zuiho, were sunk. Zuikaku, the final veteran of the Pearl Harbor strike, went down bearing hardly a dozen aircraft. The American fleet at Leyte Gulf included 18 carriers, 18 against Japan's 4. In the war's last months, as American carriers launched attacks on the home islands, Naval Ministry officials assembled reports on American naval building. The ultimate count was devastating. America commissioned 17 Essex-class fleet carriers during the conflict, 9 Independence-class light carriers, and many escort carriers. Japan added 6 fleet carriers total, and 3 of those were destroyed before they could meaningfully aid the war effort. The staff officer who had penned that marginal note wrote a fuller appraisal in the conflict's final days. He observed Imperial intelligence had monitored American construction correctly. They had known of the Essex-class project. They had gotten reports of each commissioning. The failure lay not in collecting intelligence, but in crediting it. The numbers had seemed implausible. No nation could build fleet carriers that fast. No industrial foundation could yield ships of such intricacy and such volume. It defied every presumption about naval construction, every historical example, every sensible forecast. But America had done it regardless. It had mobilized an industrial capacity Japan could not equal, could not oppose, could not even fathom until it was too late. The 4 carriers lost at Midway had been substituted by summer 1943. By late 1943, America had more fleet carriers than it held at the war's start. By mid-1944, it had more carriers than Japan had constructed in total since 1920. The officer's assessment ended with one sentence: "We lost this war in 1942 when we believed we had won it." This was what Imperial High Command expressed when they learned the U.S. Navy had recuperated after Midway. Not in one instant, not in a theatrical conference, but in a succession of intelligence dispatches, exercise outcomes, battle evaluations, and journal entries that documented the gradual, dreadful recognition that they had begun a war they could not win against an industrial might they could not rival. Yamamoto had known it before the war opened. His staff had sensed it by late 1942. By early 1943, it was incontrovertible to anyone studying the intelligence sincerely. By mid-1944, it was plain to every officer in the fleet. And by the conflict's end, it was etched in the ruins of Imperial carriers on the seafloor and in the skies over Japan, where American carrier planes flew unopposed because no Japanese carriers remained to contest them. The recovery following Midway was not merely a rebound. It was an exhibition of industrial power so immense, it made Imperial resistance finally hopeless. 4 carriers had been sunk in June 1942. By June 1944, those 4 carriers had been replaced by 15, with additional launching each month. Japan had fought valiantly, had gained tactical wins, had sunk American vessels, but none of it signified against numbers such as those. Ultimately, what Imperial High Command stated was what Yamamoto had declared before the war, that they could not prevail in a protracted contest against American industrial force. The tragedy was that it required 4 years and millions of lives to demonstrate he was correct.